Disclaimer: the following video can contain spoilers. 16 years after the death of Marcus Aurelius, Rome is led by two morally loose twins who urge General Acacius, Pedro Pascal, to conquer lands in the name of Rome. Unwillingly and forced, he takes the city of Numidia, killing Asherat Yuvogonen, apologies if I butchered that, and enslaving Hanno, Paul Mescal, in the process. Bought by Macrinus, Denzel Washington, to become a gladiator, Hanno advances through the arena in the hopes to get Acacius' head. Gladiator II was interesting. I did enjoy it as it had various elements in its storytelling and writing that I liked. That of which was a pretty vile villain climbing the ranks for power, and a twist from the first iteration of Gladiator. More of this later. I do have to say that at times the movie did show its weaknesses, but it was still a pretty good movie. Though I once again heard of historical inaccuracies, I am willing to bend the suspension of disbelief in this story or movie. Bear with me on this one. Let's begin. The movie opens up by providing setting through text. 16 years after Marcus Aurelius' death, his dream of Rome has been forgotten. This left a sour note behind because it hurt to see that Maximus Meridius' death did not amount to much. I eventually came to terms with it because it sort of makes sense. He died before his idea could actually be implemented, and at the very least, it could have been prevented by politicians or by other people during this time. I just didn't like knowing that his efforts and heroic triumph was ineffective. In the last city of Africa Nova, Numidia, Hanno tends his guardian while his wife, Arishat, does laundry. All is somber until a warning alarm is sounded. Preparing for battle, they don their armor and await for the inevitable siege. Exchanging their rings to each other, the couples kiss one last time before the war begins. This opening was very well executed in engaging us, the viewer, by putting us front and center in battle. Not only does it provide conflict towards our characters that were introduced, it also establishes their world and part of the history of this world. During the siege, Asherat is killed by orders provided by General Acacius. Hanno would then grow fury and hatred towards the general. While this is understandable, I still felt it was a bit futile as it is war. There was always a possibility that one of them would die. It wasn't like the general did something so egregious that would spark this rage. Don't get me wrong, it was an understandable reaction and emotional buildup, one of which provides the viewer a level of sympathy for, allowing us to follow along the protagonist through their journey. It was just one that, to me, did feel a bit weak, all things considered. Because it is war. For example, Hanno killed a lot of Romans that wouldn't be able to go back to see their families, and affects their family back home as well. So it isn't any different than the general protecting himself and his men from death. It's war. That's what happens. But putting this aside, the scene overall was pretty well executed, as we can still sympathize for Hanno, as the general consensus of the scene is the loss of a partner, someone who was very close and dear to him, his city claimed by Rome, and now sold as a slave for the colosseum. The only aspect they failed at was for us, the viewer, to get to know Hanno more. We do get the reason behind his hatred and what propels the story forward, but we don't see or establish his character prior to these events, nor do we get a clear understanding of his character within this scene. I will admit that it appears to be unnecessary at times, but I'll always take a chance to add character development in each scene, or at least whenever possible. Because while the opening did engage us, I think character suffered as a result. As much as I love world building and the world, I also like to understand and to know these characters. So, trying to find the balance is difficult, I understand. So, moving on. General Acacius returns to Rome and is celebrated by the emperors. As a reward, there will be games at the Colosseum. At the same time, Hanno is put inside an arena to fight wild baboons or monkeys of some kind. His rage sparks the curiosity of Macrinus, a gladiator master. Being bought by him, Macrinus promises to give Hanno the general's head if he were to fight for him. Here's where we begin to see similarities to the first movie. A protagonist who becomes a slave and is purchased as a gladiator. Where this movie differs is the story that follows, which I still personally liked. That being the twist that instead of the colosseum being a chance of redemption, to be the cause of pain and suffering, where by remaining in this route could lead to bad things because of this rage. It also allowed Macrinus to rise in power, and not being the humble and understanding gladiator master Proximo was toward Maximus Meridius. Acacius shows us that he lives a double life. He can't stand the twins and wishes to dispose of them once and for all. Waiting for his army to arrive in 10 days, give or take, he and his wife Lucilla, Connie Nielsen, plot an uprising against the tyrannical reign of these emperors. Macrinus begins his power play and demonstrates Hanno's capability to the emperors through a wager. His victory and poetry amuse the emperor that they cannot wait to see him perform in the arena. I will say, this poetry came out of left field. It does pertain to the scene, because this poetry is a threat to these twins, but they don't understand it to be that way though. But Macrinus did, and therefore strategizes his next move by knowing Hanno's past. So I get the importance of this poetry. I'm simply stating that it did come out of nowhere. While it does explain it later on in the movie, this scene in particular still struck me as odd. But again, probably just me, so moving on. During the first game, Lucilla gets a flash of deja vu when Hanno grabs the dust the same way Maximus did during his time in the arena. Her suspicions grew when Emperor Geta, Joseph Quinn, tries to recite the poem Hanno said during the live presentation earlier. After the game, she immediately goes into this room where we see that Hanno could be Lucilla's son, Lucius, through a flashback. We are then introduced to Ravi, one of my favorite characters in the movie, who recites, "What we do in life echoes in eternity," giving Hanno deja vu this time, but is then interrupted by Macrinus. Macrinus tells Hanno, or Lucius, to never let go of his rage. And the reason I say it's important is because this rage pertains to both the protagonist and the antagonist, as they both have rage. But where Lucius, will learn to overcome it, Macrinus' rage will be his downfall. Lucilla has to confirm this burning question that she visits Lucius in his cell. However, it didn't go well because his rage still blinds him. Before my review gets long, the rest of the movie goes as follows. The following game is an arena full of water. Lucius tries to kill General Acacius, but misses. Due to the upcoming insurrection, Lucius is at risk of coming into the crosshairs. Therefore, a plan to have him rescued is put into effect. But this maid betrays them, allowing Macrinus to plot a vile plan further, revealing the quote-unquote betrayal of Acacius and Lucilla's against the twins. General Acacius' fate is to be determined in the arena. This backfires as the citizens get angry that the emperors killed a Roman hero. Not knowing what to do, they put their trust in Macrinus, who stabs both of them in the back, killing Geta and taking position as second consul. As his first command, he inflicts fear to the Senate, wanting power in order to restore order in the streets, as well as control of the Praetorian army. After killing both Lucilla and Caracalla, Fred Hetchinger, he rides to the front of the army to complete his plan, but is then defeated by Lucius. Now, in terms of historical inaccuracies involving the rhino, the time period, and perhaps the water-filled arena, I am not the right person to talk to in regards to this. Were the scenes cool? Yes. Would it have been cool if it stayed true to reality or history? Also yes. But like I mentioned before, I am willing to bend my suspension of disbelief because it wasn't that drastic of a change. But if I happen to be wrong, Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I will also say that it was a bit of a letdown when the army showed up at the very end, ready for battle, for it to just end without war. I know it's just me, I'm sure, though I honestly felt like the movie was going to end in a cliffhanger, and I was honestly ready for it. There was a lot of build-up between these two armies clashing together with outright war, that when it just ended peacefully, it was kind of a letdown for me. Though I did like Macrinus' hubris being his downfall, I wouldn't mind seeing it in Gladiator III if they were to have actually included outright war. It would have been an interesting story to write or to see, where this movie ends this way, where the next movie talks about that way, or at least starts with this war. Another thing that I would have liked to see was Hanno's rage be the cause of some of his stumbles. A little bit more. Or at least more blatantly, more obvious. Not only on it blinding him on seeing Acacius as a good person, but not seeing Macrinus as a bad guy. They are both in the movie, yes, but I feel that it was done rather quickly, in the form where in one scene he's loyal to Macrinus, hates Acacius, and in the other he tells Lucilla, "I didn't know the man he was. I was blinded." So it kind of felt like a 180, where it would have been better if it was smoothly transitioned within this character. But overall, Gladiator II was a pretty enjoyable movie to watch. At least it was for me. I would still consider it a good movie. I did enjoy watching Macrinus' plan unfold as we see him rise in power and then lose it while battling Lucius. The score was also very good, and the cinematography was also pretty good. Though there are things I would have liked to see be better implemented, like getting to understand Lucius before his world changes, and seeing more how his rage blinds him, and see him overcome it better, I'd still argue that Gladiator II was still not bad. But anyways, those are just my thoughts. Did you enjoy the movie? Let me know what you thought about it down below, and I'll see you in the next review. Until then, God bless.